we have to understand what it is that we're contending with if we want to face this world in a righteous and dharmic way. We have to understand what the obstacles to that are in our life. And one of those obstacles, one of the greatest in fact, is the very mind that we carry around with us ourselves. We have to understand what is the mind? How does it work? We have to do that reconnaissance to understand what is a potential enemy in the mind and what tactics it uses to keep us from obtaining the mindset that we want to achieve in order to move through the world in a peaceful and dharmic way. Welcome to Diary of Devotion's series of discussions on Bhagavad Gita. If you haven't seen our introductory video, What is Bhagavad Gita? Please check it out. It'll give you some important context with the issues that we're discussing. Now we'll be diving into Chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So beginning with Chapter 1, we find the Pandavas and the Kauravas ready to meet in battle at the field of Kurukshetra. They're meeting here, they're about to begin fighting, and the blind King Dhrtarastra is wondering what's going to happen. He's blind, so he's not taking part in the battle. He's back home in the kingdom. Luckily for him, he's got an associate named Sanjaya who's been empowered with transcendental vision. He can see things that are happening from far distances, so he's narrating what's going on to the blind king. Let's pick it up from there. Text 1. Dhrtarastra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? The 17th century Vaishnav Saint Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments here that it may seem a little odd that Dhrtarastra is asking, what are these two sides going to do? They're meeting in a battlefield. They're getting ready to fight. It should be obvious what they're going to do. But actually, Kurukshetra is not just a battlefield. It's a holy pilgrimage site. So he's thinking to himself, Dhrtarastra that is thinking, okay, this is a holy place. My sons may be influenced by the power of that holy place and decide to turn toward the good, turn toward dharma, and compromise with the Pandavas or find some way to avoid the fight. This is not what King Dhrtarastra wants. He wants the fight to take place because he believes that his sons have the power to defeat the sons of Pandu, who, although righteous, are appearing less powerful on the battlefield than the Kurus do. The Kurus have a larger army, they have more experienced warriors, so Dhrtarastra is feeling pretty confident here. The fact of the matter is, however, the Kurus are too single-minded. They want to take over the kingdom, they want to be rulers of the world. There is no influence in this holy site that's going to deter them from that. But the battlefield of Kurukshetra has another meaning here. The original Sanskrit in this verse begins with dharmakshetre kurukshetre, which means on the field of Kuru, or on the field of dharma. So this gives us a little clue as to how we're supposed to see the context of this battle from the viewpoint of us sitting here doing the reading of this text. What that means is that the field of Kurukshetra is not just a battlefield, it's a field that represents the field of dharma for each of us. And so the question isn't just, what did the Kurus and the Pandavas decide to do? The question is, what do we do when faced with the field of our own dharma within the context of our individual lives? The implication here is that this text doesn't just apply to the characters who are within the text itself, it applies to all of us. The field of dharma is representative of the world in which we live, and in that context, we all run into conflicts and difficulties and questions about what the right thing to do is. When we come to that point, this is the text for us. This is the implication of this meaning. Okay, text 2. Sanjaya replied to the king, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Remember, Duryodhana is the leader, the linchpin, if you will, of the Kurus. He's a character who's in here he's basically pushing forward all the forces of adharma, all the forces of negativity, of grasping for power, of envy, and so on. So this is who's speaking right now. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupad. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhim and Arjuna, great fighters like Duryodhana, Virata, and Drupada. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kuntibhoj, and Shaibhya. There are the mighty Yuyudamanyu, the very powerful Uttamaja, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. So you can see what he's doing here. He's not simply praising the Pandu army, he's sizing them up in a sense. He's comparing them to his own forces. Okay, text 7. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. There are personalities like you, of course he's referring to his great teacher, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwatthama, Vikarna, and the sons of Somadatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. So this is interesting because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur again comments here that Duryodhana was divinely inspired when he said this last verse, particularly the part where he says, there are many heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. The implication being that those warriors will indeed lay down their lives for his sake, because eventually he will be defeated. Okay, text 10. Duryodhana's continuing here. He says, our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Grandfather Bhishma here is one of the greatest warriors of all time in this epic. He's actually a very saintly and dharmic person. He's always trying to do the right thing. He's always trying to keep his word and protect dharma, protect righteous action. But because of peculiar circumstances, because he made a vow to always defend the crown of the Kurus, he now finds himself on the side of evil. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur highlights the word aparyaptam in this verse, in the original Sanskrit of this verse. Aparyaptam has two meanings. It can be both sufficient and insufficient. Therefore, this verse may be accurately translated as we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, or we are insufficiently protected by grandfather Bhishma. And this dual meaning indicates Duryodhana's wavering confidence in the ability of his army to defeat the Pandavas. Duryodhana has the larger army. He has the more experienced warriors, but because his mind is so fickle, it's so used to grasping at things, he still finds himself sort of wavering in his confidence, wondering if he has enough strength yet to defeat the Pandavas. And further, the contemporary Vaishnavacharya Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj comments that Bhishma harbors great love for the Pandavas, even though he's fighting against them on the battlefield. Remember, Bhishma is actually an agent of dharma. He wants to be on the side of the Pandavas, but because of circumstances, he's unable to be. He still has great love for the Pandavas. And Sir Duryodhana is sitting here, he's wondering, how hard is grandfather Bhishma actually going to fight for us, even though he's sworn to defend our kingdom? Okay, text 11. All of you must now, this is still Duryodhana speaking, all of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments here that because of Duryodhana's apprehensions about whether he's strong enough to defeat the Pandavas, he's thinking that he should inspire everyone in his army to fight extra hard, right? As if he had the control of the outcome of his battle within his hands. If he only implored them hard enough, then they would be able to somehow defeat the Pandavas in spite of the weaknesses that he seems to be perceiving. And so here we see the reaction of a person who's too attached to power and control. Duryodhana is convinced that if only he tries hard enough, that he can influence the outcome of the battle. Krishna is going to give us a very different message about what our position is in this world and what it is that we can and can't control. Okay, text 12. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. And so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining here that Bhishma is sensing Duryodhana's apprehension, so he's taking his conch shell, which serves as a kind of trumpet, like a battle trumpet, and he's blowing on it to give this great uproarious sound just to sort of bolster Duryodhana's confidence as the battle's about to begin. After that, The conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. And so this is interesting. Bhishma has a conch shell, but Krishna and Arjuna, they have transcendental conch shells. So the explanation here is that Krishna is the Supreme Lord himself. He's to be understood as the source of all auspiciousness. He's God. Everything associated with him is transcendental, including his conch shell. And by close association with Krishna, Arjuna and his conch shell as well are to be understood as transcendental. And so similarly, by being in the association of the Lord, which means chanting his names, worshiping his form, and even simply just remembering him, all of our activities may be rendered transcendental. Thus, ordinary activities like walking, bathing, working, cleaning, or even fighting in great battles become spiritual practices when done with fondness for the Lord in mind. Okay, text 15. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his conch shell called Pondara. Says King Yudhishthir, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijay, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sughosh and Manipushpaka. See, each of these characters has conch shells, which have names. These are intimate parts of their battle paraphernalia. Okay, going on. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells. So the conch shells are being blown, the drums are being beaten. This is an indication that the battle is about to begin. Okay, text 19. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhrtarastra. So it's interesting, although the sounds of the conch shells of the Kaurava army were tumultuous and deafening, their sound did not pierce the hearts of the Pandavas, but it's stated here that the Pandavas' conch shells pierced the hearts of Duryodhana and his army. Why? Within the Pandavas' hearts, the Pandavas are very saintly devotees of Krishna. Krishna resides within the hearts of his devotees, and because Krishna is the Supreme Lord himself, nothing can defeat him. And when Krishna resides in your heart, nothing can pierce the heart. Krishna is there bolstering the strength of the Pandavas. Okay, text 20. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhrtarastra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. Remember, Lord Krishna, he's not just a bystander. He's not a fighter in this war. He's the charioteer of Arjuna. The Supreme Lord himself has agreed to drive the chariot of his friend Arjuna. Okay, Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Okay, so it's very telling that Arjuna wants to come in between the two armies and observe what's going on the battlefield. He's an intelligent military commander, and an intelligent military commander before going into battle is going to do some kind of a reconnaissance. He's going to figure out how his opponent is arrayed, what weapons they've put at the forefront. He knows these fighters very well. He knows their capabilities, but nonetheless, he wants to see their intent on this first day of battle. And so this is an interesting instruction for us as well. We have to understand what it is that we're contending with if we want to face this world in a righteous and dharmic way. We have to understand what the obstacles to that are in our life. And one of those obstacles, one of the greatest in fact, is the very mind that we carry around with us ourselves. We have to understand what is the mind. How does it work? We have to do that reconnaissance to understand what is a potential enemy in the mind and what tactics it uses to keep us from obtaining the mindset that we want to achieve in order to move through the world in a peaceful and dharmic way. Okay, this is still Arjuna speaking here. He says, let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhrtarastra. Sanjaya said, so Sanjaya is the narrator to King Dhrtarastra. He said, O descendant of Bharat, meaning Dhrtarastra, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. So in accordance with Arjuna's wish, Krishna's drawn the chariot between the two armies, revealing the struggle that's about to take place. This is interesting because for the person who sincerely petitions the Lord for the knowledge necessary to subdue all the obstacles and ultimately to attain Him, to attain the Lord Himself, He arranges for that person to attain the knowledge that they need. This knowledge comes in the form of personal realization, but perhaps more importantly, it comes in the form of the Lord's realized devotees. Within the presence of the Lord's realized devotees, we can receive instruction, we can receive insights into how the mind works and how to utilize this process of bhakti to realize both the self and God Himself. And let's be honest about it, sometimes these texts can be rather esoteric, difficult to understand. They were written thousands of years ago and translated into English from a language that hardly any of us know. So sometimes the meanings can be a bit subtle or hard to discern. And it's these devotees of the Lord, these acharyas, these people who've studied these texts and realized them for many years, who can give us not only insightful instructions as to the meaning, but can actually take those instructions and give them to us in an individuated way. They can interpret them for us for our particular circumstances and give us advice how to navigate our life that the text itself may not always specifically address. And so because of these reasons, seeking out the association of people who are more advanced than us, people who have the knowledge that we seek, is highly recommended. Okay, this is still Sanjaya speaking. He says, there Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers. This is not just a matter of two opposing armies about to meet on the battlefield. This is a civil war. This is brother against brother. The family members are split between these two factions. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text 28, Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. He's just getting a taste. This is not just a battle that's about to happen. It's a battle against, in many cases, his dearmost loved ones. Okay, Arjuna's going on. He says, my whole body is trembling. My hair is standing on end. My bow, Gandiva, is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So Arjuna, he's right on the edge here. He's almost about to have a panic attack, you might say. It's one thing to contemplate fighting in a battle against your dearmost loved ones. It's another thing entirely to pull back the string of that bow and bear your arrow down on a dear relative. O Govinda, that's another name for Krishna, of what avail to us are a kingdom, happiness, or even life itself when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudan, another name for Krishna, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I'm not prepared to fight with them even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. The three worlds means the material heavens, the earthly planets, and the hellish planets. There are two grades of, you might say, heaven within this philosophical framework. There's the highest heaven, which is Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan, as you might say. That's the abode of God. But below that, there's something called Swarga. That's the material heaven. That's where people who have accumulated so much good merit by doing charity and being pious, doing good deeds, they go to those heavenly planets in order to enjoy the rewards of their good deeds. So Arjuna is saying, you could give me all of that. You could give me the heavenly planets, the earthly planets, and even the lower planetary systems, and it still wouldn't be enough for me to have to fight and kill my own beloved relatives. Okay, he goes on. He says, what pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhrtarastra? Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhrtarastra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? So Arjuna's admitting something interesting here. He's admitting that they're aggressors. This is going to be an important thing here because Arjuna has an understanding of the reality of the situation. Okay, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's got an interesting commentary here. He says, according to Artha Shastra, there are 6 kinds of aggressors whose killing incurs no sin. One who sets fire to a house, one who gives poison, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who steals one's wealth, one who usurps one's land, and one who abducts one's wife. The Kaurava princes led by Duryodhana have done all of those things. It's perfectly within Arjuna's right to defend himself with deadly force if necessary against that kind of an aggressor. So already we're getting an inkling that Arjuna's reasoning here is fueled by something that isn't exactly in line with his duties in life. Okay, Arjuna's continuing. He says, O Janardana, it's another name for Krishna, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? Okay, Arjuna's continuing. He says, with the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. This is interesting here because Arjuna is tying back so much of this family tradition, so much of the glue of society, so to speak, to the phenomenon of womanhood. And here, Tripurari Maharaj comments that when traditional safeguards of society are removed, particularly religious prohibitions, women are more easily taken advantage of. Indeed, he says, both men and women may engage in unscrupulous activities when the expectations of religion and society are deconstructed and tossed aside. Okay, Arjuna's continuing. He says, an increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life for both the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. So this is an interesting statement here. It takes a little bit of explanation. In ancient times, many people offered sacrifices and offerings to their departed ancestors for their well-being and safety. Such practices are still performed in many places today, including in modern India. While contemporary Western people may scoff at such things, considering them to be superstitious, these kinds of activities continually serve to remind society of its past, its traditions, and its responsibilities to those pasts and those who came before. Arjuna continues, by the evil deeds of those who destroy the family tradition and thus give rise to unwanted children, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. You can see he's putting so much weight on this destroying of family traditions because that's what he's foreseeing for himself. He's seeing all of his elders, all of his teachers arrayed on the opposite side of the battlefield, and he's thinking, what will our family, what will society, what will the entire kingdom do without these elders to instruct us? Okay, he goes on. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. Driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Better for me if the sons of Dhrtarastra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield, Sanjaya said. Arjuna, having spoken thus on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. The renowned 11th century Vaishnav commentator Ramanuja comments here that it was Arjuna's high-mindedness that caused him to be filled with compassion and love for his relatives on the eve of battle. He was also filled with fear because he wasn't certain what the right course of action was. He knew that it wouldn't be a great idea to let the Kauravas simply take over the earth, but at the same time, his compassion is compelling him to weight other considerations unduly, those considerations of destroying the family tradition, fighting his relatives, and so on. So like many of us, when faced with uncertainty, Arjuna fell back on the teachings and social decorum that he had inculcated in his youth. He struggled to fit the social philosophy he had been taught as a student into the unprecedented problem he now faced. The rules of social etiquette that he kept quoting and making arguments from were designed for circumstances that were far more straightforward than the one that he now encounters. So consequently, Arjuna's arguments against fighting his kinsmen, they ultimately fall flat. He's not considering the nuances of his present circumstance. I mean, in the face of continual insults and crimes committed by the Kauravas, Arjuna is presently making arguments in favor of accommodating egregious criminal behavior. If left to their own devices, the Kauravas would not only prove to be a threat to the Pandavas, but to peaceful people everywhere. Indeed, all of those arguments that Arjuna just made about the cataclysms that would come about from killing his own family members, those would come about anyway if the Kauravas were to rule the planet. And so the simple fact is, high-mindedness or spirituality should never be taken as an opportunity to excuse oneself from the difficult activities and choices in life. And so as we'll see in the upcoming chapters of Bhagavad Gita, vigorous action with a sense of detachment for the results of that action is the first step in living a just and spiritually conscious life. This does not mean that there's no place for solitary spiritual practice. However, when circumstances demand action of us, we should never assume that inaction is superior to action. Okay, that's it for Chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. Next time, we'll dive deep into Krishna's response to Arjuna's arguments. Join us again.